Hey folks, Rob here bringing another video. This is going to be an all Stalingrad, all weekend long after action review. So that is a something that the group from Ottawa, Ontario, Canada, the ASL guys there, they do this now. This is the third one in a row that they've done. This one obviously is not going to be Stalingrad, but it's an annual late fall, early fall get together that they do, and it's basically a Friday to Sunday bash where they play a monster scenario. So the first two were all Stalingrad. It was the last bid and the first bid from Battle of the Guards, and the one from actually not the last bid, but the Red Factory's monster scenario with all four maps. So it must have been awesome. So when Dave and I went to Caslo, we met up with these ASL guys from Ottawa for the first time, and got introduced to them and found out about this thing. We told them we'd be very much interested in getting into their group because we're kind of isolated up here in the valley. We're about an hour and a half west of Ottawa, and we wanted to get more ASL experience with different people besides him and I. You know, we only gamed each other for the last 35 years, so we got invited to this weekend, and this one is going to be Slaughter at Ponyri, and it's Onslaught Resumes by Jim Akins. So it's scenario number 12. It's the monster scenario. Use all three maps. You can see it here on the left side, and you can tell that it's got a shitload of horses. So we're going to go through the scenario and what it entails, and we're just going to cover on how the weekend went. Depending on your view of sides, you'll see whether it's good or bad. But we'll cover that anyways. So in essence, like I said, it's a once a year thing that the guys in Ottawa do. Next year, we're going to do this again. We're definitely going to attend it, Dave and I. We're not sure what they're going to do. We're thinking, well, they're thinking, I think Doug Rimmer's the one that's quarterbacking a lot of this stuff, but it's whatever the group wants to do, and it's going to be something. Either it's probably going to be Eastern Front. I did mention that the Denant module has a monster scenario. There's a couple other ones in here. I do have Onslaught to Orsha too, as well as I picked up Crucible of Steel flying turrets, which may or may not have balance issues. But there are several monster scenarios that could be done. We could just revisit Stalingrad and do it again too. So, and of course, there's Kharkov coming out next year, hopefully. And who knows what the future holds for ASL monster scenarios. So there's several options coming for next year, but that's for next year. So this weekend we had 6 people, and we did a 3v3. 3 on each side, 3 Russians and 3 German players. And the scenario itself, so let's look at it. Now it takes place, you can see the map here, all right? And if you look carefully, you can see this is here, wrong color there, let me use this one here, might be a little bit better. This here is basically the Russian perimeter, well, not the perimeter, this is the row of hexes that is the no man's land, if you will. We set up to the right of it, and the Germans set up to the left of it. And you can see that all this area here is not in play. This here is the schoolhouse down here. This is Ponyri Station, and just below it is the the water tower. And over here is another 3-hex building, which is probably some administration building or something. And those 4 locations, the schoolhouse, the water tower, Ponyri, and that building, are the 4 stone locations that must be controlled by a side. And in addition to that, there are 30 wooden buildings along here, and rubble locations along here, and along here. 30 wooden building structures, which must be controlled. They must control 22 of them. So each side has to control the 4 buildings and 22 of the 30 wooden structures, rubble or wooden buildings, which is it's a bit of a tall order, I think, for the Russians especially. Now, the Germans start with control of the building up top, Ponyri Station, as well as the water tower. The Russians get the wood buildings and the schoolhouse, which sounds great, right? The problem, of course, is that if you look at the map, if you're familiar with the Ponyri map at all, you can see there's a lot of terrain issues that have to be considered. The biggest one, I suppose, is for the Russian perspective is, how aggressive are you? Are you going to be defensive, or are you going to be offensive minded? Now, because of the way the border is situated, let me clean this up a bit here. Depending how close the Russians set up. So again, here's the train station and the water tower. Actually, let's zoom in on that. And we're going to talk about our plans on all that. So you can see the red hex lines now, or the red hex outlines. This is again the perimeter line, and once more the Germans set up in this area here. Here's the Ponyri Station, which has a second level and a ground level, and that quasi first level where you can set up, but it's a transition level. So you're going to have a fortified ground level. You're going to have a units in the upper level, the old German Death Star, and you have a lot of open ground here between where the Russians can set up here and a couple of +2 TEM buildings here for them to set up. So their initial force could be set up here, but the Germans go first. And their main assault force is going to be set up here in depth. Now, you could also use these storage yards as further setup places, so you could attack from two fronts, this side and this side. So there is that potential there. But again, the Germans go first, right? So a couple of Death Stars up in the second level. You have fortified ground locations. You have a lot of units here ready to defend. And you have a lot of open areas which have to be traversed by the Russians. So as a result, you have to decide as a Russian, how aggressive are you going to be? Are you going to go for the buildings, or are you going to wait for them to come to you? And again, we'll go into the strategy about what we did as a Russian team. But I just want to show you the importance of the Ponyri Station in particular. Now, the schoolhouse down in the bottom, which has its own interesting little mini battle, if you will, going on about it. It's a very strategic location, and it is the only multi-level building. There's one under the scenario card, but it's the only multi-level building which is in this area, and it kind of dominates it. Now, you do have a lot of level 1 structures which block LOS, buildings and or woods, so you don't have complete line of sight dominance. But it's definitely death for Germans to kind of cross this road. They must really dominate this, and they must be able to get smoke on there. So it's quite a good, strong position for the Russians to control. And you can see that we've set up a bunch of trench positions which connect to the buildings in Ponyri directly, so you can go from building to trench without being shot in the open quite easily. And so we're able to funnel units into the building as required to reinforce it, or vice versa, depending where the threat's coming from. So let's look at the scenario card itself. Now, as you can see by the numbers in red, huge, right? So we're looking at around 150 or so squads a side. Now, this is broken down into basically two chunks, if you will. So each side has a main setup force. For the Russians, it's this, as well as 4 reinforcement groups, of which they can pick 3. All right, so what we did is we ignored this here for the reason that although it is the Russian armor, looking at the armor values, not great. The Germans have the elephants, the Panzer Jagdtigers. They've got Stugs, a shitload of Stugs, each with them with an A1 armor leader. They got the Stu 42s, which is the 105, each with an A1 armor leader. You've got 6 Martyrs, I think it is, or 3. And you've got some Brumbars to top it all off. So there's a crap load of German armor. There are 4 AT guns, including some PaK 38s and PaK 40s. And they have ATMMs should they get close enough to do hand-to-hand. So it's a lot of anti-armor assets that the Germans have, and we'll get into the balance issues near the end. So for that reason, we decided that this here is not going to be tenable. We don't think that the Russian armor is going to last very long. A 152, SC-152 is, I mean, it's a nice tank to have, but you only get 3 of them, and they're going to have to come on from the sides. And again, we'll cover that in a second. We just don't think that these will be long for this world. The come on, they're going to have to stop this is going to have to come on in a set number of turns, either turn 3, 6, or 8. They're going to have to come on in a certain location, and more than likely, you're going to have a Stug waiting for it to hit it with a 75 long APCR, which is just going to demolish his 8 armor, even though it's up armored in the turret. So, again, these tanks are not long for this world. So, rather than deal with 6 infantry and a tank that's going to die, we decided to go for B, C, and D, which gives us an extra 48, 66 squads. And we have 6 SU 76Ms, I think these are. The little assault gun that they have, which itself is not really that useful. It's open topped, so it's not, again, long for the world, but it's just a little extra. The big thing that we wanted was the extra engineers and the 12 extra 447s, again, just to flesh out the lines. So that was the Russian package, which comes, again, to roughly about 150 squads. And although we didn't take the armor, we do have a crap load of infantry to go primarily defensive, which was our primary focus. And again, we're going to cover those goals. So if you look at the German side, and of course, you have to pick your groups. I failed to mention that you pick your 3 of your 4 groups prior to setup. You have to pick your group, and you have to pick your entrance area. Now, the SSR for the entrance area is rather strict. Germans, not so much. So you have turns 1, 4, and 7 along the west or the north edge. It's quite carte blanche. You can come in wherever you want. Russians on 3, 6, and 8 have to come in along the south. One group has to come in along the east edge, and it hex is less than 60, so this area here. And one along the south or the east edge. So we're a little bit more constrained in where we can bring in our groups. Now, it also has to be an edge which you currently control and was controlled at the start of the game. So our perimeter, if we want to look at the map quickly, we only start with the this hex row here. So these hexes here don't belong to us. They belong to the Germans. So the Germans are going to set up in this area. They're going to slowly push into our little meager force here. And all they're going to do is they're going to push this perimeter this way. And we're going to run out of more and more real estate to bring our guys in. So what does that mean? We're going to be pushed into this area. And you can see how dense it already is, right? So we're going to run out of places to bring in our reinforcements rather quickly in the south. The Germans, for their part, are not going to have that kind of constraint. They're going to have a much more robust area to bring in. One thing I forgot to mention in the SSR was this rule right here, which is common in the campaign game as well. And that is, in lieu of coming in from the edge, they have this mechanism, again, because if you look at the map, there's all this space up here wasted up in the top left, where you can enter in on the map as a on-map entry, but you have to be a set distance away from an enemy unit, either 8 for infantry or 16 if you're an AFV or vehicle. All right, so if you're that distance, 8 or 16 away, you can come actually on the map. Now, because we have our positions set up in these locations here, what that meant was that they'd have to be 8 and 16s, which means infantry can come in around here somewhere. Around here, and tanks somewhere around here somewhere, which again offers them a lot of freedom. They don't have to traverse this whole area from here, and it's a lot less, a lot quicker into the action for the Germans. And you can see how close we are to the edge for the Russians. So we're going to have to come in from the side. But again, because per the aggressiveness of the German, we're limited in what we can control. So do we set up here in the open with trenches and whatnot, or do we come back into a little bit of LOS hindrance with the grain and we just give up a little bit more real estate? So that means the German comes here, he takes all these border edges, and he just pushes the area that we can enter in further down to the south. So again, we're really constrained where we can come in as a Russia, which again we'll talk about balance issues. So all that to say is that it sounds like a lot of units, and it is a true monster scenario. It's just very difficult for the Russians to bring in an appreciable number of units, and you have to pre-pick where they come in, right? And that's going to be based on your plan. So for the Germans now, for the same number, they have roughly about the same number of troops. Actually, the Russians actually outnumber the Germans in troops, which is kind of weird. But they make up for it with the fact that they have this armor. You've got 3 mortars. You got 10 of the Stugs. Again, each Stug has an A1 armor leader. You've got 3 of the Elephants. You got 2 of the Stu-42s, which have an A1 armor leader, and you've got 3 of the Sturmpanzer for the Brummbär. And you've also got these armor leaders here. You've got a 10-2, a 9-2, and 4 9-1s. 3 of which must go in the mortar for some reason. I'm not sure why that is in the SSR explicitly, but you must put 3 armor leaders in the mortar. So you're picking up an extra 6 armor leaders in addition to the 12 that you already have. So that is a lot of armor leaders for the 21 tanks that you have at your beck and call. And this comes on in turn 1. Now they have to enter in from the west and north edges, so they do have a bit of way to travel. So they're not really going to be effective in the north until at least turn 2. So you have some leeway for the Russian, but once turn 2 comes around, you're going to have an elephant in your face. And with 18 armor, nothing in the Russian ordnance can penetrate that, barring a critical hit. APCR with the critical hit, you can do a good number, but you need a critical hit. And even with AP, with a 76 long, you need a critical hit to penetrate the elephant, which is not going to happen very often anyways. Not the way we were rolling, that's for sure. So they also have to pick 3 of their 4 reinforcement groups, and as we were driving back from the weekend, Dave and I were chatting. We had a nice 2.5-hour drive. We discussed what their options were, and it turned out that for them, they did not pick this option as their 4th group that they did not choose to pick. So this was their first group that they brought in on their turn 1 up in the north to face me, along with most of the armor, although some of this was down in the south with Dave. This was their, I think this was going to be their second one. I can't remember. And then this was going to be their third reinforcement group. All right, so this initial OB here was set up for them on board. This armor element was coming on board probably 70% up in the north, and the rest was coming in from the south to support Dave. And this element here on the bottom right was coming in as well, setting up on board 8 and 16 hexes away from my Russian units up in the north. And of course, those guys are coming in. And of course, there's also guns which can be set up on the map. So once more, we have Pak 40s, Pak 38s, which will chew up the Russian armor, no problem. And all the Russian has for their part are a couple of 45 double longs, which sound really powerful and great. But aside from the Stugs and the Stu-42s, we just can't pen the Brummbär really good. A TK on a 75 long is, I think, a 14. 11. And the Brummbär comes with 11 armor, up armored 14. So we need, again, a critical or really close range. It has to be within 1 or 2 hexes to penetrate with a 1 or 2, sorry, a 2 or a 3 to penetrate a Brummbär. So, 6 of the 21 tanks we can't even penetrate with half of our ordnance. The 76 long is a little bit better. It's a 13 pen, but it's got to be a hull hit, and then you have to roll snake eyes to penetrate with a normal shot. Yes, APCR is a little bit better. It's an 18, which is really, a 14, a little bit better, not much, and 13 for the 45 double long. So again, these 2 numbers here are just not going to do the business on this armor. One of our biggest complaints about this, again, this is the Russian Tales of Woe, was the Russian has no response to this. We cannot outgun the Germans. This is a complete monster. I'm giving the game away right now. This is a complete monster. This is a little baby monster, which is just, it's a huge threat. 150 millimeter heat. No joke. Yeah, well, we'll cover all that. It'll be fun. All right, so that is the OBs. I covered the VCs and the RGs and all that stuff. So the other thing, which proved to be a huge detriment, is weather is overcast. So as I said, Russians go first, and guess who gets to roll the first wind change? Sorry, Germans go first, Russians go second. I get to roll the wind change die roll, and at Kaslo I won the boxcar certificate for having the most boxcars. And of course I roll boxcars, which means when it's overcast you get rain. So rain means at 7 hexes and beyond, for every multiple of 6 hexes, you're getting a +1 low visibility hindrance. And turn 2, I think it was the bottom of turn 2, maybe turn 3, it turned into heavy rain because we everybody took a turn rolling for the wind change, and somebody else rolled another 10, 11, or 12, I forget what, which increased the rain density to heavy, which means every hex gives you a +1 to low visibility for every multiple of 6. So at 7 to 12, you are at +2, and so forth. Which, of course, coupled with the fact that our guns cannot penetrate this, our guns are penalized further by the fact that we can't even hit this to take advantage of the pack front capability of double hit. So when we're rolling doubles, and in a pack front, you have that ability, which means you can roll twice on the to hit, or to kill, I should say. We weren't able to utilize that because we couldn't hit because of the rain, coupled with the grain as well. So we were double penalized because of that. Now that also impacted the Germans to a degree, which meant we weren't being shot at. However, because it also eliminates smoke, they were not required to drop any smoke, so they didn't need to cover their approaches anymore with smoke because they had the rain. So rain did not help our cause any. And that was self-inflicted because we're the ones that rolled it. All right, so let's look at the tag team. So we had 3v3, as I said. So up in the north was me. Basically, I had this area here. Elements were actually would have been these guys here as well. This was all me. And Ray was responsible basically from this area to the south, right about here. And then Doug had the very important part of our plan, which was basically everything to the south of that. Primary focus was the schoolyard, which was the focus of our defense. And it was going to be the linchpin of our entire plan, which we're going to cover in a second. We had, on the German side, we had Dave. He was taking over the south. We had Renee, the master strategist. He was up in the north, coming in from this way. And then we had Shandy, who was a starter kit player that actually joined us. He came over to the ASL group in Ottawa, and he decided to dip his toe in by joining in with a monster ASL scenario. Welcome to the ASL world. He took over the center, and very keen and eager to learn ASL. So welcome to ASL, Shandy. Yeah, so he was facing off against Ray. I was facing off against Renee. And Doug and Dave were dueling it out here in the center, or sorry, I should say the south, for the majority of the game. Setup took about an hour, and that was primarily because leading up to this, we spent, mostly Dave, sorting all the counters out into their respective reinforcement groups and organizations, including all the counters, acquisition counters for all the guns and vehicles and ordnance, because there was so much of it. Each one of these vehicles has their own specific letter ID, so we had to find this corresponding acquisition, large and small, and put them all together, and that greatly aided us in setting up everything within the hour. It was a combined setup because we were so focused on ours, we didn't really notice what was being put down by the German side, so it was, mutual trust that we're not sneaking peeks at the other guys' setup and everything. The way this was done by us Initially, we started with this vassal map. I did first. We talked about how we're going to divide our forces. This is my chunk. Doug had his. Ray had his. I set up mine. I handed the vassal file over to Ray. He did his. We handed it over to Doug. He did his. I made a master copy of that with all the units as a fresh product. And then I made all the, I added all the German OB, and then we handed that over to the Germans. This is our plan. This is what you can see. Everything that was hip is hip, including all the mines and flash mines. And then from there, we handed it to them, and they did their planning as well. And that went over without a hitch pretty good. So they had it for a couple of weeks so they could work out their battle plan, which was a very cohesive, strong battle plan, and kudos to Renee for coming up with their attack plan because it worked. Which brings us to the a couple other things that we deviated from the scenario a bit. One is a sniper counter. So for some reason, the scenario card only has one sniper per the scenario. Now you look at the size of it. In the campaign game, you'd have two sniper counters. And rightly so, it's a huge map. A single sniper is going to get so much work. What we did is we actually had three. So each pairing had its own sniper. So if you activated a sniper in your area, your opponent would get to do his own sniper thing. And that worked out pretty good. Because last thing we wanted was something happening up here affecting something happening down here when a sniper goes on a tear or something. Because it just didn't seem fair to us. So each group had its own sniper, and it worked out very good. The one thing we did do, however, was we stuck with a single self rally, which on hindsight maybe we could have gone away with two. Again, in the campaign, you are allowed to do two self rallies. So what they should have probably done in the SSRs was bring in those campaign game SSRs, two self rallies, and two snipers, because for a monster scenario, having one sniper and one self rally just doesn't cut it. It's just too much. It's not enough for the size of the area that we're going to be playing in. So we basically got started on Friday night around 5 or 6, and we played till about 1 in the morning. So literally was an all weekend long game session. And then the next morning we kicked off around, I want to say around 10 or 11, and we played again till about 12 o'clock, midnight, 1 in the morning. Sometime around there, I think we called it for the night. All right, so let's look at the plan. This is going to be a bit of a long video. I'm going to put chapters in so you guys can skip ahead to those parts that are pertinent to you. The Russian plan that we had, we looked at the map and we realized, first of all, there's the 4 stone locations at Ponyri, the water tower, and the schoolhouse down here, as well as that administration building up in the top. For us, we realized we own this. This is just death to cross. So why would we cross it with our meager forces? We looked at the German armor, which is just going to sit back. It's going to destroy anything kind of protection that we have. We're outgunned. They're going to have Death Stars up here in the second floor location, which is just going to decimate anything that moves. So this is very untenable, we thought, for an attack. Yes, we could set up close. We had these houses here. We could have had a line of trenches here, maybe leading all the way back to the houses. But that is still a little bit too dense, and if we're attacking, we're not defending. And we had, again, a large German force that would take advantage of that. So our plan was strictly defense, which, good or bad, again, you don't know until the dice roll, and it turned out maybe we should have done a little bit more offense. But as it turned out, again, in hindsight, it probably may not have worked out that way. Well, we don't know. That's just it, right? So our schoolhouse formed our entire lynch plan of our defense. We wanted to put as much of our effort there. Our initial plan was we even put a pre-registered for our Katusha, which we gained as one of our RGs, and this was going to come in turn 6. So we thought that with enough German effort, they might even be in this location here. So even though we might have a couple units in the school, even in our trenches, we're in +4 trenches. We're going to drop a Katusha, even on our own forces, and just decimate this area. Now, a Katusha, even pre-registered, is never accurate. However, the most it could be off is up to 3 hexes. So, with fortune on our side, if it comes south or even northeast or anywhere in here is good. If it comes southeast, we're kind of screwed. But, 5 times out of 6, hopefully it's going to head in that direction. And it's going to whack the Germans. And then with that OBA, we also get 24 airborne, Russian airborne 458s, and who are elite, stealthy. It's going to be really good to push into the school. We have all these trenches, which we can use to funnel in units, like I said already, where we should be able to retake that school. So our entire effort was to protect that school. And for me up in the north and for Ray in the center, that meant that we were there to die, which was, like I said, our plan. So we'd set up more or less to face a straight up west to east attack from the Germans. They were going to come in this way. Again, you have a couple Death Stars up here. They're going to whack this thing here. We're going to have armor coming in this way. That was great. We did have an AT mine belt, and we had flame mines. One thing we underestimated was the ability of the search, and very important for you guys that didn't know this, there is a search casualty die roll you make when you have booby trap capability, which we have level A, and that means any die roll of 12 is a casualty reduction for a task check. So, and any every time they did a search, we would have to roll a single die. We roll a 1, we would have casualty reduction for the units. So every time they search, so they found this guy, they walked into this one, which didn't cause any damage. They found this one. They found this mine, and they found a couple down here as well by doing searches. And we forgot about that search casualty die roll. So it was our bad. It was our mistake for not knowing that rule. And we could have caused a little bit more carnage, and we never did. Surprisingly, actually, as a tangent, we didn't get any booby trap die rolls in this game. For having 6 guys aside, 3 on theirs, 3 on ours, I don't think we rolled any 12s in any task checks, which was, again, just very surprising. But, so back to the plan. My goal was to slow down the German advance as much as possible. I was going to get hit. I was going to get pushed out of these houses. These guys were all going to fall back into the trenches, maybe the pillbox, maybe back all the way to the Russian airborne line. This is a secondary line of Russian airborne, and where they have to set up in reserve. And once the Germans were in here, hopefully I could hold on to these trenches, pillboxes. I would be able to shoot them up. I'd be able to come back in and take them. If not, my other plan was to fall back to the south. Give ground, wear out the clock, and then in the meantime, good old Doug is holding on to the school as long as possible, while Ray is more or less a pivot in the center, trying to hold off Shandy here from his, shooting up on his upper levels, as well as any maneuvering that's going on down here. And again, we had a deliberately weak point here in the center because we wanted to have a German thrust come in this way, which never materialized. They move very slowly in this area because it just seems so obvious of a trap in hindsight that why would you come to this way? And again, the German plan, which we're going to cover in a bit to give us some of that away, was they actually expected us to attack Ponyri Station. So they were playing a defensive game on their side in the center. We were playing defensive on our side in the center. So these two basically never did much of anything except shoot each other back and forth, and I've already covered the rain. So it was very ineffective on both sides, by and large. It was whittling down one squad here, one squad there, breaking weapons, half squads would be reduced, that kind of stuff. It was very ineffectual for the most part. And it was just nothing but acquisition counters here and here and here for this 80 mortar. But that was the Russian plan. So we're going to give ground, we're going to give ground, we're going to give ground. We do not care about these wooden structures. As long as we hold on to the school, the Germans cannot win the game. And by denying them that victory, the Russians win. So the Germans are the ones that actually, I think I misspoke at the beginning for victory conditions. The Germans have to control all 4 stone structures and 22 of 30 wooden buildings. The Russians just have to hold on to one stone building and or 9 of the wooden rubble buildings. So it's fairly, I would say, easy conceptually for the Russians to do that. It's very hard tactically to do that because, again, the German onslaught is just so powerful. So then let's talk about the German plan. And again, this came out from talking to Dave in the car ride home. So as I understand it, and I may be wrong, Dave's plan was to more or less basically smash into Doug's schoolhouse. He basically had the OBA initially. It was I think it was 100 millimeter on the 20 table. So his job was to basically take the schoolhouse. He was going to cut off this village, try and get behind all these Russian units, cause failure to rout, which would also put him in a position to assault into the schoolhouse, securing that. And then from here, you could just, help roll up the wooden buildings. Meanwhile, Rene was coming in from the north. In the center, Shandy was supposed to play a defensive posture, anticipating a Russian assault into Ponyri Station, which never materialized. Now, because again, Shandy was a bit new to the ASL, the tactical game, and Dave was so busy down here with Rene so busy up top, they didn't have enough time to tactically advise him when to start pushing. And we were the same way. Ray was more or less sticking to our plan. We didn't have enough information. Do we start pushing? Do we have enough people to start pushing? And coupled with the fact that we were completely out of position to push, because now Ray would have to cross open ground to get into that school. And again, this is a kill zone. When you have Death Stars sitting up here on the second level, mortars, heavies, and mediums, you have Brumbars coming in here, and you have a line of Germans behind this wall, rail cars. It's just death to enter into that location. So Ray had no choice but to stay in our lines. We couldn't risk it because we never set up with the intent of attacking. If we would have used our OBA module that we had to lay smoke, we could have probably conducted an attack. But because our focus was the school, we decided to use our OBA to keep Dave secured. Now back to Dave's plan. It fell apart because he drew red cards. And I failed to mention in the OBA that we played the Pleva rule. So whenever you draw a red card, it goes back in the draw pile, and you add another red card. So that means that you're never going to run out of OBA. All you're going to do is just get more red cards. It makes it harder to draw black, but you're never going to run out. So he had black initially, it's automatic, and then he drew a red, and then he drew a red. I think he may have drawn a third red or something, then we called it for the night. But because of that, it actually worked out in Dave's favor, because inadvertently he did not have enough resources to conduct his assault, which meant that he had to grind his way through the trenches, and in the process he built up his strength. So when it came down to the second day, he was in a very strong position with a lot of depth, ready to prepare for any assault that the Russians were prepared to take, which of course, because our plan was to play defensive, Doug never took. So Dave's building up his strength. Doug is not attacking, letting him build up his strength, building up his own strength, and the Germans are just getting more powerful. So by the time day 2 rolls around, we're getting to turns 3 and 4. Reinforcements are starting to show up for the Germans. Dave's dice are changing hands now. They're starting to roll good. Doug's are rolling poorly. It was starting to swing in the German favor. Dave was starting to make inroads into the school area. So it was by inadvertently drawing red cards, Dave actually became a much tougher opposition to Doug. And because Doug's dice failed him on day 2, it became a correspondingly weaker position. It was just a a calamity of errors that happened. And up in the north, Rene, as I said, he brought in most of the armor, about, like I said, 70%, I think. 2 elephants. He had one of the Brumbars. There's one in the middle, and I think there was one in the south. and he had a lot of the Stugs as well as the Stu 42s, and he had all the half tracks and Pumas and such. So all of that was set up in this area with the tanks coming in from the north. So he had this RG group, this one down here. Yeah, RG Delta. This one right here is the one that he brought on. And again, because I was set up so far in depth, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, he could basically set up at the limit of the German perimeter infantry, and the vehicles were set back 16 hexes. Right, so he's sitting right here, and again, you're looking, you got some dismantled mediums, you got heavies, and he had 2 Death Stars coming in this way. He had a Death Star in those 2 locations here, and they proceeded to shred. I broke a gun. This guy here died from fate. I rolled boxcars, so he's gone. I'm down to 145 LL, and his armor's not even on the board yet. And it was just a slow attrition rate on day 2. By the end of day 1, he was in, I believe it was this area like this. So he was down into this first line of trenches, and basically in this kind of position, with this pillbox pretty well neutralized, these guys here all neutralized, and my pack front completely useless. And I'm amazed he did this. Somehow, by sheer luck, he found 2 AT mines here with a Puma, which failed to roll a 1 or a 2 twice. He found a flame mine here, and then by sheer luck, he brought everything down this path, thereby avoiding all these flame mines. He found this one here, but he avoided those 2. He avoided this whole mine belt here. I mean, he identified the mine belt. He identified the flame mine, so he probably figured it was clear. But he brought everybody down through that little gap, and I'm just watching as he like really just step left or right, just once, just step left or right, waiting for him to step on one of these 2, and he never did. So he basically walked everything through the center here. He just bypassed my defensive. It was quite comical. And he, again, as well, he also negotiated this mine belt here, drove a tank into it, which never mobilized. It just made a trail break, and then he brought his guys through the trail break into the, basically point blank into the Russian phase. So that was basically the German plan. Dave would assault into the school. Eventually, after isolating that village, Shandy would hold the center, anticipating a Russian attack, and Rene would push in from the north and just crunch his way down to the south, taking house after house after house. And very important for you German players, securing the border edge as you come down to the south. You want to take as much of this as possible, because every hex you take is one less that the Germans or Russians cannot use to come in. Right? So every map edge hex you take is one that cannot be used for reinforcements, which is very important. And just sandwiches all the Russians further south the more you take. So as you can probably imagine from the summation that I've already given, the battle did not go well for the Russians. We ended up calling it around midnight, 1 o'clock in the morning on Saturday at the German turn 6. It's a 12-turn scenario, and that was because basically all this here, where's about here? Yeah, all about this here was gone. Elephant took care of these guys, Flaming Rex. So I had these 2 guys here, I had a couple guys here, and I had my 82 mortar. That was it for my forces. So I was completely out of the game. Ray had, I think he had his guns. A Brumbar was taking care of this pretty good, but in 2 turns, after Rene would have done with me, he would have been probably on this line here, maybe further south, with Shandy adding further support this way as well. All right, and then that's would have been by turn 8, and then it's basically would have been Doug sandwiched into this corner with Shandy, Renee here, and Doug or Dave coming in this way, and Ray and I just cheering Doug on, trying to keep him motivated. As a matter of fact, in the entire most of the game, because again, this half of the map isn't used, Renee was over here, sitting on my side of the map for most of the game. I spent most of the game sitting over here because all the action was happening here and down here. So, you know, you have Dave and Doug. They're doing a typical ASL sitting across from each other. You had Shandy and you had Ray. They were doing their thing across from each other. And it was supposed to be Ray and I, or Renee and I, but because everything was down here, this is where he came over to do it. So it was interesting, I'll tell you that. Yeah, so the it was bad. We blame it on a couple things. One is the rain that came down in the Russian turn 1. Never ceased. It turned heavy around turn 2 or 3. Never let up. It impacted both sides, but really penalized the Russians because we had a lot of four firepower attacks, and you start throwing in grain again. 2 light grain is equal to 1 LOS hindrance, and you start tacking that onto any kind of TM. It's going to be impossible to get any kind of hit when you have, you know, a Death Star coming in like this, and this is the only guy that can shoot, right? And then you got another stack on this side, and you have another stack on this side. This guy's getting pummeled and broken, pinned, and then he gets jumped on 3-1 in combat, and then Renee moves down to the next guy. In the meantime, you got armor that's moving all around on either side of it. You're just getting pushed down further and further. So that was the weather. Just a sheer defeat or destruction in detail, I believe it's called in the military circles. Destruction in detail of the Russian positions by armor and infantry combined tactics by Renee, which is very well done. Like textbook destruction in detail. Just working its way through, methodically demolishing everything, using every last resource and just hammering his way down, eventually getting down to about here when we called it. Just destroying everything. Death Stars, again, 16, 24, or 20 firepower attacks with a +2 because they had -2 leaders, -1 leaders. Gets away with most of the, or removes most of the weather modifiers. Then you're left with the +2 wooden building. They're in +3 stone, so we can't even retaliate. They have 6 hex range. We have 4 hex range. So the Russians are penalized by weather, inferior firepower, a lot of LMGs. Again, 6. These guys here, for example, a 447 with an LMG firing into this. So you have 4 firepower. This would be +1 for rain, +3 for the building. You're looking at a +4 on the 4 table. And their snipers a 3, so you're looking at sniper bait territory. Do you take that shot? And you throw in orchards and such, that's another +1 right there. So that's actually a +5 on the 4 table. You can't take those kind of shots. You have to fire group. And that's how many of those can you take before you run out of targets? And in the meantime, he has 1 stack that's just nuking you. So German Death Stars, as always, are just deadly. The rain helped them more than it helped us. And because they didn't have to waste time with smoke, they were able to move a lot faster. So the center was the first 2 turns went, I think, pretty well according to our plan. We knew that they were going to do a strong push. I was a bit not surprised, but overwhelmed how quickly the front folded up in the north, because I wasn't expecting the this infantry RG here with all this armor or half tracks and Pumas and whatnot to come in from the north. I was expecting it to come in here or towards the south, towards the school. I wasn't expecting it from the north. Armor, yes. A lot of infantry, no. So I wasn't ready to deal with 2 Death Stars in this area just shredding my pack front. So that was my bad for not anticipating that. I probably could have built more trenches this way. Maybe have a line of trenches along here to back up this line of trenches here. Maybe even connect them so that I could fall back this way when I'm getting overwhelmed and just retreat back into more cover. That might have been, in hindsight, probably would have been a better choice. Just defend against some northern kind of push. But alas, I didn't. But the first 2 turns went not too bad for the Russians. We were holding our own. Even in the south, Doug was pretty well holding his own, despite the schoolyard being rubbled. The schoolhouse was rubbled in the first turn. They have a pregame bombardment, which is a target hex and 2 hexes around it, which is morale checks for things. So I think 1 hex was rubbled. Then he had a turn 1 FFE drop on a pre-registered hex, which rubbled another hex of the schoolhouse. So we already got 2 of 3 hexes rubbled. There goes our level 1 elevation machine gun platforms. So it was calamity right from the get-go. But he was still holding on as much as possible. And then Dave drew red card after red card. Wasn't able to get his OBA on. And Doug was able to solidify his hold on the school. So it was going great in the south. The north was doing what it's supposed to do, was take a hit, buckle a little bit, but not collapse. And I was able to slowly start coming down to the south. But after that, it just turned to complete shit. Dog shit on Saturday. The center was lackluster, I think, because, again, they were set up anticipating a Russian push. We were set up anticipating a German push, neither one of which materialized, and neither one was set up to push into the other. The Germans were a little bit more than us, but our guys were definitely not set up. We had no forward trenches. We had no forward cover to do that. We could have used OBA smoke, as I said, to cover an attack of that nature, but we never did because we wanted to destroy Germans in the south. We could have used that OBA up in the north. There was a time when this complete area was covered with Germans. And I was actually very tempted to use an OBA right here. It would have had a spotting round. It would have had to delay a turn to actually use an FFE. But at the same time as this parking lot of Germans was here, we had a pre-register down in the middle area, this right here, and there was a cluster of Germans sitting in this location right here, so we tried that. Unfortunately, it proved to be inaccurate. He rolled a 5 or 6, I think it was, and a pre-reg is accurate on 4 less, and we ended up deviating over here, which only hit 1 half squad, so it was just poorly placed. If it would have landed on target, it would have been much more effective, would have neutralized this, hopefully, and then we could have maybe assaulted into this location. Alas, it didn't happen, and it just proved to be very ineffective. And after that, we moved the artillery back down to the south. So we could have done some damage to the north, which probably would have delayed the crunch that happened. But again, you pick your battles, as it were, and we decided the south was more important, so that's why the OBA went back there. Rightly or wrongly, so in hindsight, probably wrongly. But yeah, the center wasn't. This was just a shooting war going back and forth. I mean, you have TM, you've got LOS hindrances, you got the rain, and you've got not that strong firepower attacks. You got the 4 firepower 45 longs. You've got 16, maybe 12 firepower machine guns with that range, trying to shoot each other. You got mortars, 7 to hit, but they're just not doing enough damage to hit each other, and you're just whittling each other down. So these two are treating each other with shots, but just not enough to cause a good punch. Yeah, so I've already covered the north and south, so I think that's pretty good there. Yeah, in the south, day 2, the biggest thing I think that happened was Doug's dice turned on him. They were great on day 1, Friday. Day 2, they just went south. Dave's were the reverse. His were poor on Friday. Just wasn't making the good rolls. He drew a couple of reds. The next day, we let Shandy draw the cards. He drew 2 blacks back to back. And so the OBA was back on target. And Dave's dice picked up the pace, and he started rolling 1s and 2s when he had to. and so he's able to swing the battle back to his favor, and he's able to start putting some pressure onto to Doug's guys. And again, even though Doug had probably 50 squads in this area alone, 50 squads, all jammed into these trenches and in the buildings. Again, it's a sardine can, right? You're all jammed in. Not a lot of movement can be done because there's no place to move, and as a result, you also don't have a lot of fires you can do. It became crunch time, and when your dice aren't working, they're not working, and you're able to get again attrited slowly and surely. You're just going to get worn down, and that's basically what happened. So up in the north again, bouncing up here. By this time, again, I was basically pushed down into this area here. Rene had moved one of his Pumas basically initially around this way, which forced all these guys failure to rout. I had one plucky squad last here. He survived a hand-to-hand melee, and then a sniper landed on him and broke him. So he was stuck in melee with two guys, and then a sniper broke him. So, like, really? Come on. This line just more or less collapsed. I made two mistakes, really egregious ones. One is I had a leader here with a heavy and a squad. Squad died. The leader picked up the heavy, and I completely forgot to fire it. Secondly, I won ambush in a building, and it was a 3-to-1 attack, and rather than retreat, which is what I should have done, I should have withdrew from the combat. I stupidly decided to stick in hand-to-hand, thinking, well, it's going to shit. I may as well take somebody with me. A smarter move would have been to withdraw. I would have had a 16-up-3 attack the next shot. In my prep fire phase, I went in 1-to-3, and of course I lost, and I basically wasted a squad for no reason. So I did two stupid, egregious mistakes, and I wish I could take those back. Because a 16-up-3 would have been a lot better than losing a squad. It might have actually caused some damage. So, but yeah, the north collapsed, and again, I was jammed into this area here. The raised pack front was starting to collapse again. We managed to kill a tank. The only tank kill of the game for us, I think, was here. Ray caused a possible shock, which turned into an unknown. And as a 50-50 on the next die roll, which after the game we shut it down. We asked Rene to roll it, and of course it was a destroy tank. So it was like, great. We killed a tank on turn 6. I did destroy 3 half-tracks, so that was great. But at that point it was just, great, so who cares? The game was completely lost because most of his force was unscathed coming in this area. So yeah, basically all that to say is we called it on Saturday at around midnight. The northern force was almost untouched from the Germans. I caused some damage, but not enough to slow it down. And once the elephant was in range and started killing one tank, killed another tank with like 3 shots, I think it was, and both of them were gone. There's nothing stopping him from just wiping out the rest of the force. So what does all that mean in terms of takeaways? If you look at the scenario card again, what we think is that it's I don't want to use the word unbalanced, but it favors the Germans maybe a bit too much. The Russians have this armor, which is just going to get demolished by the superior German armor. This is going to have to come on a board edge. You have to pick well in advance before anything starts where they're going to come on. You have no idea. So it's going to be the east edge, say. Somewhere on the east edge they're going to come on. And you don't know where they're going to be in terms of success rate when it happens. So if it's like Rene's attack plan, you're going to have a whole bunch of armor in this location, Stugs, 242s, all with 8-1 armor leaders, ready to just hammer anything that steps onto the board. And they have 76 longs, 75 longs, I should say. A couple 88s with this elephants. 150 heat rounds. I mean, come on, man. You're just going to wipe away anything the minute it comes onto the board. So I don't think this is a viable option. I'm no doubt that I'm wrong on some of this stuff. Better players than I could definitely find a way to make this work. I have no doubt. Duggan tanks are great, but again, a 76 long with APCR only gets you so far. The 76 long artillery, for the same reason, is the same caliber size. You're having a 14 with APCR. I'm sorry, but that's just not enough to penetrate, 6 of the 21 tanks that you're going to be facing, unless you roll really well, which you don't have that luxury typically. This 45 longs, 11 pen, so that's going to do a number on the Stugs if you roll well, a 5 or less, 6 or less, maybe a possible shock or a mobilization. Nothing else is going to penetrate or destroy a tank. A flamethrower, you've got 2 flamethrowers down here. How close are you going to get to a German tank to use a flamethrower? If you're a smart German player, you're never going to let this get close enough to use. 2 hexes away, I don't see it. Barring a complete collapse of the German infantry, why would any German player let a flamethrower within 2 hexes of them? Rene never moved any tank closer than 2 hexes unless a unit was pinned or it was broken, and then he would sleaze it. If it was pinned, he would sleaze it just so that we couldn't shoot outside the hex. If you're pinned, you can't attack it in reaction fire. So it was. The Russians don't have much in the way that can stop a concerted German attack. We have elite status, which means your depleted ammo is 1 greater. So we have 5 APCR, which means you now have a 6. So again, that's great, but it's a 6. And when you attack in, the Stugs and the Stu-42s are small targets. You attack in grain, you attack in weather, moving, motion, what have you, button down if you're a tank. It becomes very difficult with no armor leader for the Russians, I don't think. We got 3. We have 3 armor leaders, so it's not too bad. But again, this is only going to get you so far before they die. There's just not enough of this, I think, to cause a... And I think we're all in agreement, the 6 of us that were talking about this after action. I think we're all in agreement that this just wasn't enough to swing the battle. Not for us. Again, there's other better players than us, I'm no doubt. And you could probably make it work for you, and that's great. For our battle, the way that we played it, this would not have swung the battle in our favor. That we just did not have enough punch to deal with this. And when this is coupled with this real up close, then these little babies, 88 double long is just going to murder things. Now, historically, Dave was actually watching a video on this stuff. Historically, these were destroyed by Soviet tank hunter teams of people getting close to them and disabling them because these guys were deployed forward without an infantry screen. Now, nobody in ASL is going to do that unless you're right out of her because they're so fragile. There's only 3 of them that you have. You're never going to send them forward by themselves. So, historically, you're not going to be able to replicate that in this scenario, which means you're going to be surrounded by infantry. You're never going to get close enough to cause any kind of damage. There's no way, I think, barring a somehow getting one of these tanks around the back end to take a rear shot, there's no way you're going to be able to penetrate it at Panzer Tiger, barring a critical hit with APCR. And how many shots of those are you going to get? A pack front gives you a double hit capability. But again, that's only a double hit. You need a critical hit. You need a critical hit, which will kill it, so you don't really need a double hit anyways. But you need to have a really good hit, critical hit, a really good to kill shot to take out a Tiger, a Panzer Tiger. And we just don't have that as a Russian player, which means they can run around like the behemoths they are, rightly so, and they just destroy your Duggan tanks with pretty well immunity. But that's just us. Again, Renee's battle plan, he's the one that came up with the plan for the Germans, was great, phenomenal. Dave would slug it out with Doug in the south. The center, Shandy was prepared for a Russian assault, which never materialized. Renee himself with all the infantry and from the 1st RG and whatever was available at the start would push into this area and work his way to the south. It was a great plan, destroy every position in detail, and just clean house. So all that to say, overall, the weekend was a blast. The result notwithstanding, we had lots of fun. It was a good weekend. Just to roll some dice all weekend long. It was one of the biggest battles that Dave and I had played. We had set this kind of stuff up before, but we never actually followed through on it to this level. It is a lot of stuff to work with, and advice, I suppose, if you want to consider that, coming from the guy that lost this, is it's a different mindset for you guys that have never tried this and maybe thinking about it than a normal scenario. So one thing that I was curious about, I guess, and questioning, when Renee was destroying in detail my units, he would spend an inordinate amount of firepower trying to reduce my units. So here, for example, we have a let's use this guy here. So we have a squad with a heavy and a leader in there. He had a couple of tanks, and they were just sitting here. Actually, let's do this one here. That's where they were. He had 3 tanks. There's one here, and one here. And they were just sitting here, and they would pummel this. Actually, not here. It was up in the. It was in bypass. That's where it was. So one here, and one that was in bypass. And he spent all 3 tanks in their advancing fire phase, as well as in the defensive fire phase the next turn, wailing away at this kind of guy. And I'm just thinking, like, well, that's a lot of time to waste trying to whittle it down. Reduce it to a half squad. Eventually they broke, and then he was able to move in and kill them in close combat. And the reason why, in a normal scenario, that you wouldn't do that. You would break them. You try and force them to rout, but you wouldn't waste that much time trying to destroy a half squad. In a campaign game or in something like this size, you would, because these guys can come back and they can ruin your day. You have to eliminate even something as small as a crew. You can't let this guy just sit here because he's going to come back. He's going to come and reclaim all those map edge hexes, and now suddenly these now become eligible entrances for Russian rear attacks, which come up behind you. So you have to spend the time and effort to destroy in detail all these little positions. You can't just leave, like I said, a wounded 127 or a leader. You have to spend all that time and energy and firepower destroying units as much as possible. So I just wanted to bring that out. It's one of those things you learn by doing something like this with people that have done this in the past. It's a different mindset when you play something this large. First of all, there's so many units that you have at your beck and call. You kind of forget certain things like search casualty die rolls, but you also have to implement certain other things like overwhelming firepower because you want to destroy completely a unit's capability to work. You want to enforce failure to rout. You want to send things like a Puma all the way around, or a half squad all the way around, so that it can get behind a guy, so that it can force failure to routes. Because you want to destroy these guys completely and utterly. You don't want to leave a little half squad sitting here on a half edge, board edge, because in a scenario you don't care about it. A half squad is not really going to be much of a threat, because when your opponent does his self rallies, he's probably not going to waste the energy on a half squad unless it's part of its plan, or it's critical, or it's near an objective. Then they might, right? But typically, or there's nothing else to do with it. Typically, there's other bigger fish to fry, and it's not that important to the bigger picture, right? In a game like this, it is a big picture. as I said, you leave one half squad, he comes back, and suddenly your whole flank is exposed, and the game could literally turn on a dime like that. So I just wanted to go over that. But yeah, Dave and I had a blast. We're definitely going to do this again next year. No idea what kind of scenario that we're going to be looking at. I'm going to offer some suggestions. Maybe Bounding Fire, or Bounding Fire Productions, or maybe Kharkov if it comes out. Here's hoping. We'll see what they offer. And so I just wanted to put that video. It's going on a bit long. I'm not going to edit this down very much, but like I said, there are chapters in it, so you could have skipped forward. Thank you guys very much for watching. It's been a blast. There's going to be an unwrapping coming up in the next day or so, and then sometime this week I'm going to be doing a live play of Stalingrad, the scenario C, which is the combined scenario A and B with some armor thrown in of the original scenario classics from ASL. That's going to be live. Probably take me 6 to 8 hours to play, and that's coming up this week sometime. So we'll see you guys in those videos. Bye bye.